Welcome back to another episode of Happening Hoops Chats. I'm joined today by a friend of the program. I've known him for a while, Brett Putz, assistant, or sorry, uh, special assistant to the head coach at Indiana State. Brett and I knew each other back when he was an assistant coach at Chicago State, and I used to cover games there when I was a student at Valpo. So good to see you again, Coach.
No, it's great to see you, man. I know just catching up before. I guess I've skipped. It's been a few years. I didn't realize you were done with grad school and now had a
Yeah.
job and all this stuff. So yeah, I'm a little bit behind on things, but no, it's been fun to kind of follow your path and in the the basketball media stuff. So
Yeah, and been good to follow your path as well. We're both moving on up in the world. So as I said, they're kind of in the intro. You are the special assistant to the head coach at Indiana State. That's a position that I've kind of seen pop up a few places in the recent years. But I think fans might not know exactly what that role entails. So can you describe to us, what you do on a day-to-day basis?
yeah, no, that's a great question, and probably the most popular question that I get
Yeah.
from talking to people. You know, it probably varies at a lot of different schools. The NCAA has made a lot of new kind of changes in rules now with allowing more people to be able to participate in some different coaching activities and stuff like that on the floor, whether people are recruiting or everything, that way. So, one of the things with it is I do a lot of administrative, things here. I'm not, necessarily our director of ops, but I do and help with a lot of different things administratively to kind of help the program run, whether it be academics, whether it be, budgetary things, team travel, a lot of things that way. But then I'm also allowed to be able to break down film here. I'm kind of help with offensive things in practice, just kind of seeing things, on the court. And that's, not always all the time coaching on the court, just depends on recruiting. But, just being able to see things and talk to coach about certain things offensively is kind of the main one. He looks at me or has me do there, and then recruiting wise can kind of help, with recruiting calls and contacts for people. And it's actually right now because one of our assistant coaches, him and his wife are expecting here in the next month. I'm actually able to be on the road recruiting right now as well. So I'm almost a full-fledged assistant right now because I can be on the road recruiting. Before I just could, watch things from
Mhm.
home. So like in July, I was watching a lot of the different live streams that were going on for AAU events and kind of searching for kids different ways and trying to get as much film and bring some names to the table for people to be able to watch that were out on the road as well. So it's a little bit of everything here, which is a lot of fun,
Yeah.
but it probably looks a little different at every stop.
Yeah, but that is interesting, kind of bringing together almost elements of like, an assistant coach, a Dobo, a video coordinator, and just kind of bringing them all together and helping out the program however you can.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think the biggest thing I try to do, wherever I've been is just to add value to the staff. That's the biggest thing I think as an assistant coach or administrative position or whatever, you want to add value to the staff that you're on.
Yeah. And in talking about adding value and just you've been on a lot of staffs. Like I was looking at
Yeah.
kind of your resume, and I think it'd be hard pressed to find a state in the Midwest that you haven't lived in.
Right. Oh yeah.
You
No,
know,
trust me.
there's
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just stops at, in the Division I level, Omaha and Chicago State, but also a bunch of, junior colleges, Division IIs. You were at St. Cloud, your alma mater, Wayne State, Highland Community College, Des Moines Area Community College for the past 2 years, where you got, to be the head coach kind of for the first time in your career. Um, what are some things that you've taken kind of from each stop that are now helping you now in this particular point in your career?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing when you say it out loud, it has really been a lot of places. Like I knew it.
Yeah.
My wife is tired. We're tired of moving.
Hmm.
Because we actually are just kind of completing our move here to Terre Haute because we've been in temporary housing and all the different things that goes into that. But moving is not fun. That's the first and foremost thing I will tell everyone as
Yeah.
you
I'm
yourself.
going through one move now, but this is, just like short little move from like the city to the suburbs in
Yeah.
Baltimore, and I
Yep.
can't imagine the amount of moving that
Oh
you've been
yeah,
doing.
no. Yeah, and we had bought a house and like this move has so many different moving parts to it we've never had
Yeah.
before that yeah, we're selling a house and we only owned the house for 2 years, so we couldn't sell it till a certain date. And
Mm.
there's a million different things with this one that was crazier. But from the basketball standpoint, what I love the most is that like I've been able to learn from a ton of different people. And I think the learning aspect goes both ways. Like, yeah, you learn, and everybody always thinks like you learn from like just good experiences. Like, no, I've learned what not to do, as well when you get into a certain opportunity or certain things there. So there's just a ton of learning that goes on. I also think I was a young coach that got opportunities early in my career. And so it gave me a lot of, vital experience. Like being a D2 assistant, there wasn't, there was very, very few, few things I didn't get to significantly participate in because we only
Mhm.
had like 2 assistant coaches. It
Yeah.
was me and a GA, and I was a 23-year-old, full-time assistant, kind of learning on the fly there. Then I went to Nebraska, Omaha, and I was the director of ops. Well, because I had these experiences as a D2 assistant, I was able to help the program in some different areas there as well because I knew how to do certain things and they didn't have to teach me. And then I was able to also learn kind of what the extra stuff that goes into being a head coach. Like I worked a lot one-on-one with our head coach, with his schedule, with things, with the booster club stuff, team travel at a whole different level that I'd never really experienced. All those different things I had learned, and it just kind of let me see like what goes into running a program, that way. So I wasn't as involved in the X's and O's and the recruiting and stuff there. I was more involved in like running the entire operation. So I got to see what goes into that. Highland, Illinois allowed me to get back recruiting and doing player development and stuff like that. And then Chicago State, I was our ops, I was our academics, I was an assistant, I
Yeah.
was, you name
The,
it, like
the folks at Chicago
everything
State,
but drive. Yeah, everything but
yeah,
driving a bus,
you
technically.
you do many roles there.
Yeah, no, exactly. Everybody does. But again, like where I was able to add value there was like I had experiences doing certain things, at that level. And then DMAC, I was able to put together from a basketball standpoint, but then also run a program the way I wanted to run it, and we were really successful there. So from the basketball standpoint, like, yeah, it was certain we didn't necessarily run anything I had run or did at other stops. It was my own stuff from an X's and O standpoint, but a lot of the intangibles, the habits, the culture, those type of things, our identity, was things I kind of had learned from good and bad at other stops. And so I think that's what has helped me in my career is that I have a ton of different experiences, at a lot of different levels. And that allowed me, those experiences allowed me to grow as a coach, and that's what I really like. The first year on a job is awesome. Like your head's spinning, but it's
Mhm.
awesome because you learn so much, during those times.
Yeah, well said. That's you just walk me through there, and I appreciate the breakdown of that. Um, I know that you talked a little bit earlier about recruiting, and that you have a background in recruiting, specifically international recruiting. A friend of mine in the business, Ivo Simovic, was an assistant coach at Loyola. He's now at UCLA. And also kind of did a lot of international recruiting. And he brought Santi Aldama, a first round draft pick, to Loyola. Um, and so I just have like kind of a question about like international recruiting. With these international kids, I've seen that oftentimes they maybe more fly a little bit under the radar and tend to, you know, not always, obviously the bigger ones, they are going to bigger schools, but
Mhm.
sometimes they seem to like slip through the cracks a little bit more. And would you say it's like just coaches don't know how to recruit as well internationally, or like these kids don't aren't publicized as much, or I mean, Evo always used to say it's such a relationship business. How would you describe it, kind of international recruiting?
Yeah, and his experiences are a lot different than mine, obviously, because he came from over there. Like Salme's situation is interesting because I actually recruited one of his teammates to
Hmm.
Highland at Canterbury. So I had kind of known of Salme before that. I think so much of it is relationship driven, with things. Because you got to think about those kids are coming from halfway across the world a lot of the times. And so they want to, and their families want to really trust the people that they're going to play for, or be around every single day. And I think that's just huge, when it's all said and done, when it comes to international recruiting. I think from a under recruitment standpoint, that's probably changing more and more because people are investing more time into that. I mean, I know it's something here we're investing a little bit more into, with things as well. But a lot of it is just the relationship piece, the relationships you have with the kids, with the agents over there. And by agent, it's different than what agent means over here. It's more like
Hmm.
their advisors,
Yeah.
and the people there. So I think a lot of it is just the relationship piece, that they want to go somewhere where they know that people have the best interest and they're going to take care of their kids. So I just think that being a genuine person, having a good situation for them to be in, goes a long way, with the international recruiting piece, with things there.
Yeah, and then I mean, we haven't even really gotten to Indiana State. I want to ask you a few questions about the program there. So, uh, Cooper Neese, who's a senior. He's been there for a while. 2 seasons overlapped when I was in the Valley at
Mhm.
Valpo. Cameron Henry had a big role for you guys last year, and bringing in kind of one of the highest rated recruits to come to Terre Haute, Robbie Avila. Is there anyone else that we should keep an eye on the roster for you guys this season?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've got a lot of different guys, I think, that will probably surprise some people a little bit. Cade McKnight was a D2 All-American at Truman State, as a big man. He's in his 6th year of college, so he's really experienced, with stuff. And this is where the COVID stuff is crazy. Like Cavassier, McCauley, DePaul transfer, who actually played for Coach Schertz as well at LMU before he transferred to DePaul. Is a very talented shot maker. I think he'll be someone as well. Trent Gibson is transferring, another D2 transfer for us, that way. So it just, I think one of the biggest things that people will see is that there's just a lot more depth than there was a year ago on the roster, a lot more versatility, with things. And hopefully, people will kind of be able to see, coaches, whole vision for a program and playing style, and won't be maybe as limited as they felt like they were at times last year offensively. Defensively, I think there's a lot of length, to be able to be a little bit more versatile defensively than they have been in the past. Or they were, I shouldn't say the past, than they were last year with Coach Schertz.
Yeah, and the Valley is such a a good league for defense, that like teams are just so sound defensively. That I mean, I kind of is a good segue into my next question here. That I have, it seems like Indiana State, and this is maybe more primarily during the Greg Lansing era. They're always kind of like in the middle of the pack. They weren't usually towards the bottom, but they couldn't quite break into that top tier. What do you see that you guys have to do in order to get to that top tier?
I just think so much of it goes into I'm not going to speak on maybe necessarily, previous staffs or
Hmm.
anything like that, but just in general, like the Missouri Valley, having grown up watching it, it is such a competitive league. And there's so many games that are won or decided by, very thin margins. And so, what can separate, second and fifth or second and sixth could be, 2, 3 games. And what goes into winning or losing, like low possession games, or um, losing, winning or losing close games is just those details and your attention to details and those winning intangibles and winning plays, and that's one of the things I learned to try to take with us, when I was a head coach is, eliminating what goes into losing. And so that's being really detailed, being really sound, offensively and defensively. So I think for any team, that's probably the biggest thing. I know that's something that we talk about for this team a lot, is just, those details, those, every possession, making sure you're locked in and dialed into to doing the best you can. Like, yeah, you're not going to be perfect, but, can you make sure that you're as locked into what you're trying or supposed to be doing, on the offensive end, on the defensive end, to limit those mistakes, that way. So I think that's probably the biggest thing in such a good league like this. It's going to come down to who can win, who can win those, close games in crunch time.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of, last question here for you, and we're already kind of talking about the Valley a little bit. There's kind of been a lot of movement in the conference. I mean, Loyola Chicago, a brand program that kind of, I don't want to say put the Valley back on the map, because the Valley's always been on the map, but just, another program that made a Final Four. They depart for the Atlantic 10, but the Valley's kind of reloading, with bringing in 3 new teams, 2 of which I'd say are, just really solid basketball brands, Murray State and Belmont. Of course, they bring in UIC too in the Chicago market. And, we're both Valley guys. You grew up in Iowa. I went to Valpo. Where do you see the direction of the Valley moving forward?
No, I mean, I think it's such a brand name that hopefully it's moving in a direction to continue to be, or to get back to being, a multi-bid league. So much of that is outside of our control, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I remember the days where it wasn't uncommon for there to be 3 Missouri Valley schools in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, there's certain things nowadays that make that harder. But I think it's moving in the direction of being a multi-bid league, again, because of, adding, the Belmonts and the Murray States and UIC is a really good program. They have a great brand to sell. I believe Coach Yaklich is an unbelievable basketball coach. So, but just like those brands of, like you said, Belmont, Murray State, like those teams, have been NCAA tournament teams that have been in the Sweet 16s in the past decade and those type of things. So, yeah, you lose a Loyola, but you add two great brands there. And I think there'll continue to be movement, just because the Valley is the Missouri Valley. Like in the Midwest, it is the premier mid-major league, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of people that would agree with that. So
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, and like I said, it's different than the Missouri Valley that I grew up watching in Iowa, but that doesn't mean that it's still not a great, basketball conference. And I think you could look at the football blueprint or footprint a little bit, and you could see where maybe there could be some movement in the future with some really good brands in some different areas as well. That would be, really good teams and additions, that way. I know one time they had talked about maybe going to a southern market a little bit. We'll see, but I think the direction is really positive, just because, again, the brand of the Missouri Valley Conference is so well respected throughout college basketball.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of that, nowadays with scheduling and conferences getting a bit more savvy with how they do their conference schedules to increase opportunities for the teams at the top and getting them quad.
No, I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Like somebody, I can't remember what sports writer it was, kind of broke down who was only playing who once. And if you look at it, like, yeah, there probably was some stuff set up to try to help some people potentially with their net ranking or whatever it is. Again,
but I think that also, I mean, that just helps the Valley as a whole, because then if you're able to get more teams in, all of the programs, even the ones at the middle and the bottom, are going to get more revenue shares. And then, that way, if they have more money coming in, they can probably, schedule better buy games, which helps all the metrics. And I think it'll bring everything up.
No, agreed. I agree. And I think it'll be, I mean, I'm really looking forward to being a part of it. that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, want to thank you for taking the time, Coach. I really appreciate you coming on. And if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any more of the podcast episodes. This has been Happening Hoops Chats. Thank you for listening.